What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another reaction. In this, we have Sanjeev Sanyal exposes global ratings conspiracy in Western echo chambers. Before we dive into this video, if you guys happen to enjoy, please don't forget to smash subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and let's see what we got.
PPP terms, we already are the world's third largest economy. We are the largest population. Incumbent powers will find that uncomfortable. Various indices, global narratives are very often used to tie us up into a corner and keep us there. There is a whole network of these think tanks, NGOs, whatever you may want to call them. There's a huge ecosystem of them, almost all of them in the North Atlantic. The funding for almost all this network of think tanks is actually comes from an extremely small group of funders, whether it's Soros's Open Society or Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation. Just historically, what we would used to do, we would bend to them. We do have a tradition in our family of running akhadas and martial arts.
Hello and welcome to Strategic Minds with Neeraj Thakur. Today we are with Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, who is the member of Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Welcome to our show, sir.
Pleasure to be here.
Mr. Sanyal, you are a very aggressive policymaker who has been taking the fight to the opposition, especially at the global high table. So my first question to you is that what is the biggest challenge that India is facing with its sudden rise at the global high table?
So first of all, if you're going to be sitting in the global high table, if you're going to say we will be in the not too distant future the world's third largest economy, in fact, on PPP terms, we already are the world's third largest economy. We are the largest population, and we are now a significant geopolitical actor. For example, security in the Arabian Sea is now heavily dependent on Indian Navy. So we are already a major player in the world. Not surprisingly, other countries, particularly incumbent powers, will find that uncomfortable. Now, it's not like we are in some collusion course with the rest of the world. It's not like that. We both collaborate and compete with multiple countries around the world on multiple fronts. Nevertheless, we need to be clear that as a emerging power, in fact, in some ways now already there, we should be willing to punch at least at our own weight class. In the sense that we need to be willing to call out various benchmarks, various indices, global narratives that are very often used to tie us up into a corner and keep us there. Now, historically, there was nothing much we could do about it because we could just smile and take it on the chin. But we are now in a state where we can question them. And in fact, I personally have been involved in many such pushbacks. And I think this is an important part of growing up.
Yeah,
Mr. And I think India 100% is in that state now. And I think y'all know one of my favorites to do it, Josh Shankar calling out Western media. The hypocrisy of Western media is always golden. Love watching it. He doesn't mix his words, and he's very well spoken. And I think what he said right, maybe in the past, where India wasn't at the place that they are now, you had to just kind of take it on the chin, smile. But now at this point, world's largest population, you got your economy rising. I think he said in terms of one benchmark, I guess they're the third largest economy in the world at the moment. And if you don't have them there, they're 100% on their way. Their economy is rising rapidly. The infrastructure is growing quickly. And so, yeah, like India's at the point where like, hey, like, we here now. We in the room with y'all now. Y'all big guys. We in the room with y'all now. So they're definitely able to call out a lot more, and they do.
Just because we've been seeing that you've been taking on the Western narrative, and at so many places, especially with regards to ratings and everything. But there is one more thing that the kind of credibility or the control that these international rating agencies hold. When we try to rate global institutions and other sovereign bonds and everything, do you think it will allow us to have that kind of narrative? And what kind of
So
pressure
we
pushback
have
will
barely
you face?
started even attempting to do this. So first of all, you need to understand how this mechanism works. So what happens is that there is a whole network of these, you can call them think tanks, NGOs, whatever you may want to call them. Almost all of them in the North Atlantic. And what they do is they come up with rankings, they'll come up with indices, and so on. Quite arbitrary methodologies, by the way. But nevertheless, they create this. And there's a huge ecosystem of them. Now, historically, what we would used to do is to simply say, oh, well, ignore them, or, we would bend to them. As I have shown that, look, much of what you're seeing is actually illusion. If you dig in a little bit deeper, you will see first the methodologies, and I've written extensively on this. The methodologies are themselves questionable. But what also is important to realize is that the funding for almost all this network of think tanks is actually comes from an extremely small group of, funders. Whether it's Soros's Open Society or Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, just you can count them on the tips of your fingers. Now, what they then do is amplify their views through this network of NGOs and think tanks. So you get the impression, oh my God, so many people are saying this. In fact, they're not. They are just legitimacy laundering. Okay. Now what happens is these views then find their way into other things. For example, general media conversations. Now it will now enter artificial intelligence, which will pick up all these and will further amplify them. And people now unthinkingly Google up on ChatGPT or Google or wherever and say, is India correct on this so and so topic? And it will pop up, no, it's not, because you have already created all these. Now, then this thing goes even further. So the question is, why is it that these people have legitimacy? So one is that the original funds, have certain views that we have kind of created an echo chamber. But the question is, how does this echo chamber itself get legitimacy? And so I've investigated into this also, and it's quite interesting. One of the ways they do it is through the World Bank.
All right.
So the World Bank has something called Worldwide Governance Indicators. Okay, this is a curated list of sort of good think tanks and rankings, etc., that they curate on their own website. And it's very widely used. So, and it's not just, opinion making. It has real world consequences. It feeds into sovereign ratings. It feeds into ESG, environment, social and governance indicators, and so on and so forth. So it has and academia, by the way, widely uses this. And then you have, various bond indices, equity indices, etc., which the financial markets are using. And it's a very convenient set. Nobody is going to argue, see, World Bank has given it a stamp of approval. But investigate this a little bit more. When you go to that website, and anybody in the audience can do this, you can check it out. You go to the World Bank's World Governance Indicator website, scroll down to the bottom. What does it say? You will discover that it's actually not the World Bank's opinion at all. In fact, it has a disclaimer saying that it does not reflect the World Bank's opinions or that of the board of directors or anything. It's the opinion of two random researchers who are mentioned there. And so the opinions of two random researchers have now given legitimacy to all these think tanks, which in turn are creating a smoke screen from these original 5 or 6 funders. So what
I'm telling you, there you go. He basically broke down to me in my head how things work, but I didn't know the process of everything. Like, in my head, it was much simpler than the way he pointed it out. So he said, what, you got 5 or 6 funders? I'd call them the elite, right? They got money. They got money. Money gives you power. say such and such, etc. Right? So these 5 or 6 companies that are funding these think tanks and funding all these things have a lot of money, and so now their kind of opinions get taken as fact. It sounds like, and so now they spread a certain narrative that they want you to believe. And now it gets to these think tanks, and now it spreads out from these think tanks and everything into media, and now it goes from media, and it goes into AI, and it goes into Google, and it goes to Chat GPT, and so now when you're searching something up, hey, is this true? No, this is not true. All because they were given legitimacy, but I feel like I always known in a sense that like there's a certain group of companies, organizations, people, however you want to say it, that you ain't gonna find them on the Forbes list that are just absolutely bonkers rich, that are ridiculously, that Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos can't touch, that no, they're that rich, and I feel like they run things. They run things, and they're behind the scenes, and I don't know if we're ever gonna know who they are. But and this could be me being a conspiracist, but that's who I am. But you heard him, 5 or 6 companies that basically have their narrative that they create gains absolute legitimacy through this process. That's crazy. That's crazy. But that's what money does.
You are seeing here is not dissimilar to how black money is laundered through creating layers of accounts. This is legitimacy laundering. And this is being done on a very large scale over long periods of time. It's just that till very recently we used to just take it. I'm just pushing back and pointing out to you. And I not only do it behind closed doors or write technical papers, I write about it in newspapers. I talk about it in podcasts like yours. And so far, I have not received any reasonable explanation for how this system works. So now, because I'm asking these questions, when people stand up and begin questioning any of these think tanks about their methodologies, and somebody stands up and asks, how is it that, the opinions of just a very small number of so-called experts, who very often are not even named, is considered to be some sort of a world indicator, then how do you justify it? You will have the absurdity of the directors of some of these think tanks trying to fudge the issue by making statements like, and I'll give you, you can Google this up. So it's, there's an interview by some journalist of the director of Varieties of Democracy Institute in Stockholm, which is a very influential institute. And he's asked, your methodology has been questioned. His response to it is also laughable. He basically says that our methodology is based on supercomputers and high maths. You've got to be kidding me. Is this your explanation? Why do you need supercomputers to, compile the opinions of some 30 people? I mean, I could do it on Excel sheet. In fact, I can do it manually. It's that easy. So
I can do it on an Excel sheet. Matter of fact, I can do it manually. What do you need supercomputers for? There's no need. There's no need. You're just trying to make yourself, to me, sound more legitimate by saying supercomputers and high data math or whatever. You're trying to throw people out. He's like, that's not even necessary. Like, I can do that manually. So it almost, in a sense, like trying to make himself sound more legitimate. When you question these methodologies, make themselves sound more legitimate by saying we use these certain processes that are undeniable. And he's like, maybe to somebody else that might work, but that's not gonna work on me. That don't even make sense.
Somehow they think that they can. I don't know why he thought that he could intimidate Indians by mentioning computers and maths. But anyway, that was their thinking process. And so for the first time, we are really pushing back and questioning all of this.
Mr. Sanyal, we understand that the West drives its narrative through its global think tanks, multilateral institutions, and so many other things. But they have been doing this thing for the last 100 years now. In fact, even before that, if you just look at the Rockefeller and other foundations, China started countering it 2 decades ago when they started having money in their pockets and they started investing back in academia. What is India's strategy? What should be India's strategy? Because India does not still have those kind of funds to fund global institutions the way the West has been doing all these
First of all,
years.
there isn't a great amount of funding in all of this. The funny part of
Really?
this is
Really?
actually about intelligently creating echo chambers. Okay, the amounts of money in this are very, very, very small. It is just that we did not for a very long time pay attention to it. The amounts of money are not very large. There's some money, but it is not beyond the capability of today's India certainly, and to fund all of this. But it actually requires intent. Many of these methodologies that I'm pulling out and deconstructing did not require a huge amount of effort on my part. I mean, I did it with just, I have a very small team. And in fact, two young researchers helped me do all of this. So me and 2 people, that was all that it required. And we are already creating a dent in the conversation. So why is it that this was not done systematically? I personally think it was a lack of intent. And it's only now that, one, we realize the scale of it, and two, that we have a government that is willing to back this effort. But you see, eventually, we need to realize, first of all, that it's not so much just the money. It is a certain attitude. For far too long, our own intellectual class was complicit in all of this. Okay, post-independence, who was our intellectual class? Large parts of our intellectual class were not those who fought the British, but in fact those who had collaborated with the British. And so subsequently, large, I would say there are notable exceptions, and these honorable exceptions should be certainly respected. But a very large part of our intellectual class either signed up to the Western, and others signed up to the USSR and various forms of the left. And after the collapse of the Soviet Union, they all kind of merged back into one group that is largely very much complicit in all of this. And by the way, one of the ways these narratives have seeped into our academia, seeped into advice given to our government and so on, is through the children of the elite. I mean, you'll be shocked to see the extent to which the children of bureaucracy, judiciary, senior politicians, and so on, work for many of these agencies and are fully willing partners in the cause, in their cause, in return for fellowships and other such things. So, I think we need to begin to calling these things out, and I think you don't want to make a big fuss about it, but at the end of this, this is now the first time that we have a government that is willing to back a serious pushback. And once you do that, once you begin to do that, you will begin to see others standing up and do it too. So once you show intent, there are people. It's not like there aren't people in India willing to do it.
I 100% believe the government in power now, yes, 100% will push back and on these false narratives about India, or these false narratives that the West has made and still makes, and they will push back. Like I said, Modi, don't play that. Jashankar, don't play that. I love watching Paki Sharma. She's not having it. There's so many in India now that 100% push back against these false narratives that the West tries to create. And you absolutely love to see it. But he said for so long, he talks about, right, our intellectual, like they said, are not the ones who fought against the British, but the ones who collaborated, right? They go out to the West, or they went out to the USSR, or right, they went with the left. But now, like, you see the government in place and everything in place to actually push back against all these narratives. And people are starting to call them out. People are starting to say that's not right. That's false. That's untrue. And for so long, yes, the West, through these narratives and through certain things, have controlled the world. But you can see with other powers starting to rise in the world that the West grip on the world is starting to loosen. It's starting to loosen. And I think that's incredible because the West isn't the entire world, right? There's so many countries and everything that have been voiced to us for so long, that have had to just take it for so long, that are now starting to rise. And I think a lot of that is due to, in part, to India. Like, I feel like India really does give a voice to the voiceless. And so you see other countries starting to rise and the West grip starting to loosen. And hey, like the world's more than just the West, right? There's a lot more to the world. But this is absolutely incredible so far. We're going to continue going down it. Absolutely enjoy getting to listen to him talk about everything. And I'm in agreement with him. But I thought there would be a lot of money in the funding. I figured a lot of money was getting spent. He said not really much funding. He said there's some money, but nothing beyond India's capabilities. It's just that they thought to do it way ahead of time, and they thought to do it with intent.
People will follow. So, for example, you now have CareEdge, which is an Indian ratings agency, which has now come up with its own sovereign ratings. Just 2-3 weeks ago, they published their first set of 39 countries. By next year, they'll have 80, and then eventually about 100 countries that will do sovereign rating for. It required us to have the confidence to do this. Mm-hmm. And others will do it too. I am quite certain there will be other think tanks that will come up with our own democracy index, our own sustainability index, our own happiness index. And then we will have to also be confident enough to say that, the World Bank's governance indicators should include these as well.
All right. Mr. Sanyal, since we are discussing global narratives, for a very long period of time, there has been a narrative that the West is rich because it has very strong institutions, whereas the South, or maybe India, countries like India, they have not been rich because our institutions were weak. Don't you think that this narrative actually negates the whole fact that the West is actually rich because of the legacy of colonialism?
Well, I mean, the West obviously became rich originally because of colonialism. But to be fair to them, they also invested in various kinds of institutions. But let me make two qualifications to this. First of all, it's not obvious to me that we can't create institutions. But again, it requires intent and boldness on our part. The second thing is, it's not as if the institutions in the West are not under some severe stress. There are people, the same kind of narrative building machinery has also been used in the West itself to subvert their own institutions. So you've seen, for example, in the last couple of years, top academic institutions like Harvard and so on, seeing their top leadership having to resign because questions were raised about their impropriety and all kinds of other things. You had the large number of questioning internally on the policies and politics of that country, on those countries. And in fact, the way we look at these countries has also got to switch. I mean, there is a particular gaze with which the West sees the rest of the world. We now need to be willing to reverse that gaze. So, for example, if there are certain kinds of political events that happen in India, they will use a certain language. But, let's use the same language to describe today's US election campaign. How would we say? Opposition leader is being harassed by repeatedly being court cases being filed against him, and then there have been 2 assassination attempts against the opposition leader. We are very concerned about democracy in the US. Same language that they use. Right. But we now need a intellectual class which is willing to use it, right, and is not so concerned whether their son or daughter will get or will not get a Ford Foundation fellowship.
Do you think that India's intellectual class is not using that language because they're
because they're completely complicit, because they are more interested in getting fellowships from the other side.
Okay.
And this is not new. This has been true for a very long time, since at least from before independence, that our intellectual class happily signs up to whoever happens to give them some small, um, you know, um, incentive of some sort. And by the way, India is not unique in this.
Yeah.
Okay, this is routinely done for controlling narratives in other parts of the world. This is true of much of Africa. It is true of Nepal today. It is, and it was clearly part of what happened in Bangladesh just a few months ago.
And I feel like that's difficult to, and he's saying like that, yeah, they're aware of this and they collaborate and they're a part of this. So what we need is the intellectual class willing to use the same rhetoric as the West used against them and willing to call that out against them. He said, but we don't have that right now because the intellectual class is actually working with them because they don't want to lose like the fellowships or the incentives that are given. And it's hard to say that anyone wouldn't take certain incentives. Even at the cost, I guess, of downplaying your country or not being willing to talk about the another country because they are the ones giving you the incentive. So you just kind of don't say anything. You let things slide. And it's hard to say, like, in that position that I wouldn't take a certain incentive depending on the incentive, in order to not call something out or not say anything or collaborate. In that position is difficult, but he's like, I think India is getting to the point where that intellectual class that he's speaking of, and when he talks about intellectual class, I don't necessarily completely understand exactly what he means when he says intellectual class, but when he talks about it, I think that India may be moving to the point where maybe the intellectual class does start to get bold and does start to do these things that he's mentioning. Y'all talk to me in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think.
All right. Mr. Sanyal, there has been a rise of demagogues across the world in world politics, and they have held on to their ground over the last 10 years. Do you think that this is a rebuttal to the whole idea of globalization because all the demagogues, they have been propagating against globalization?
Look, demagogues of various kinds come and go. The demagogues who are anti-globalist are there, but there are also demagogues who are pro-globalization. Why should we not call the globalists demagogues? Point of the matter is there are all kinds of populists and demagogues. World politics has always been full of them. I mean, was Churchill a demagogue or not? Seen as a Bengali, I don't see him particularly differently from how the Jews see Adolf Hitler. So it's a matter of perspective. So when you say that you have these very charismatic characters who then use their charisma and political sort of momentum to do all kinds of things which we may find uncomfortable and dangerous, then why call only one side of them? The other side is also quite dangerous. After all, the globalists carried out several disruptive wars in following so-called Arab Spring and all of that. We call extremely disruptive. Was that not demagoguery? Was the invasion of Iraq without any finding of WNDs, was that not demagoguery? So demagoguery exists in all spaces. In fact, the very fact that you call one side demagoguery and not the other tells you that you yourself have fallen for that narrative framework.
All right. Sanjeev, there is a view that the globalization in the world is now on the retreat. What's your view on this thing, especially with regards to if it goes on a retreat, what kind of impact it will have on Indian economy, especially towards India's technology sector and overall capital flows?
I don't, first of all, believe globalization is on the retreat. Nor do I think it is some great late 20th century, early 21st century event. I have written extensively on it and making the point that globalization has been going on from at least the Bronze Age. And there have been ups and downs along the way, but by and large, the globalization is a widespread state of being the world has been in for long periods of time. Even the colonization of India by the British is one form of globalization also. And there is another format that we went through after the collapse of the Soviet Union for about 30 odd years. That format is under some stress because of the rise of China and the new dynamics that is causing. There are obviously pushbacks on mass migration and so on. So certainly the the conversation has new dynamics, but at exactly the same time we are all using X and Facebook and WhatsApp. These are also forms of globalization. So I don't think
That's
globalization is in
true.
any way on the back. The format it has changes. We may not we may not see the kind of growth you saw in goods exports, but services trade around the world is booming. I mean, India is one of the beneficiaries of this. So I don't think globalization is in retreat. I do think the format is clearly changing.
All right, Mr. Sanjay, of late, in fact, now India finds itself once again at the crossroads where, the West is wooing India, but then there is Russia, China, who are also like, they want India to be on their side, but for certain reasons, India has been definitely on the side of Russia. But how long do you think this situation can continue without hurting India's interests?
As has been very clearly pointed out by the Honorable Minister Jaishankar, that in the end we are on India's side. That is a constant.
There you go.
And we
Point
do not
blank
want
period.
to, upset anybody else. We want to trade with them. We want to
Yeah.
take advantage of the global economy to export. We want to import investment and technologies. And so we want to be a partner to the world. And we have no
Yeah.
particular interest in taking sides as such.
There
But
you
yes,
go.
I mean, for a variety of reasons, we have historically had greater friction with China than with the West. And we are more integrated in some ways with the West culturally because of the English language. Many of our relatives, etc., live there. We may go there on holidays or whatever. Not so much with China. But if you take from a good
I do agree in the standpoint of that there's a better relationship there with the U.S. and the West than with China. I do agree that India is going to do what's best for India. And that's 100%. Like you said, Justin Carr has said that many a time. So, and not that they want to hurt relationships with anybody, right? They want. He said that we want to be a trade partner with everyone. We want to be a partner to the world. But at the end of the day, we're going to do what's best for us. So, if the world might not like us buying oil from Russia, but if Russia is going to offer this oil at the best price, that's where we're going to get the oil from. The word so it does. India is not about taking sides. India is about like doing what's best. But India is also like helps a lot of countries. I feel like that don't really have a voice in the world, and they help these countries to gain a voice, and I feel like that's an incredible thing. But first and foremost, they're gonna take care of India, which every country should. First and foremost, take care of your country. But then you should also be willing to help others, 100%. But they have had this relationship with the West. While it's kind of been strained at points, you feel like, because Western media is kind of likes to take digs at India for whatever reason. But India's getting to the point where, yeah, y'all ain't gonna keep taking them digs. Y'all ain't. There is a good partnership there at the moment. And then with these tariffs that could possibly be on China up to 60%. I watched a video that said India could fill that gap in trading with the U.S. because 60% tariff is probably going to make China trade with the U.S. a lot less. So India could step in and fill a gap, and should be interesting kind of to see how the West and India's relationship continues to grow and prosper. But then India's relationship with everybody and how they continue to grow and prosper, and how India itself as a country continues to grow and prosper.
perspective, you look at all the props you have here, this mic, everything will have Chinese inputs in them. So, it depends how you think about the world. We have very, very close links with China as well, whether we like it or not. From the amazing number of direct or indirect imports we do from China.
All right. Mr. Sanyal, one final question, and usually this question is from the guest's personal life. We know that, in India, a lawyer's son wants to become a lawyer, an economist's son wants to become an economist, but your son has chosen to be an MMA fighter. What made him choose this field, and what was your reaction as a father?
See, I mean, obviously, as a father, I'm concerned that it is an extremely rough sport, prone to severe injuries.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, I'm concerned. But the fact that he has chosen that to take his own risk, I'm proud of him. He's done very, very well. As you know, he rose to become the national champion. He now represents India in global tournaments. So, I'm certainly very proud of what he's doing. And wish him very well. And yes, I myself didn't take my father's profession, neither did my father take his father's profession. So in that sense, so we have all been first generation of something. My grandfather was a lawyer. My father was a civil servant. Basically was a financial markets guy. Now I'm in government. I'm a writer, but my elder son has decided to be an MMA fighter. Who knows what he will do later in life? But in some ways, it's good to see that spirit of risk-taking remains.
Yeah.
But at another level, to be fair, he has carried on a family tradition at a different level. We do have a tradition in our family of running akhadas and martial arts. So in a sense, he has reverted to what my grandfather and great-grandfather would have been doing in terms of being in this kind of space.
This is it from today's Strategic Mind with Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us, and we look forward to talking to you again.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, I love that form of risk taking. I had a son not too long ago. Don't know what he's gonna be, what he's gonna do. I hope he grows up and does whatever he wants, whatever makes him happy. Like legit, I think all parents want that for their children, or should want that for their children. Whatever is gonna make them happy, that's what you do, right? But make sure it's able to feed you and all that too. But yeah, I absolutely love that interview. It was an absolutely incredible interview. I feel like I got to learn a lot, and I feel like he is very well spoken. He has a lot of knowledge on the topic, and yeah, him like Jaishankar and other media in India are starting to push back and against these false narratives that are created, and it's awesome. That's all we have. If you enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, check out the next one. I'll see y'all next time.